Behold, Nintendo's greatest multiplayer experience.
The Wii U was a failure. Despite this, many people, myself included, praise it for its exclusive titles. One of these is Splatoon. Announced at Nintendo's E3 2014 digital event, aka the best Nintendo E3 event, it was seen as a big deal since it was Nintendo's first new IP since Pikmin in 2001. People were also fascinated by the concept of Nintendo making a competitive shooter game, in the most Nintendo-y way possible, of course. Even with all that though, the verdict at the event was that it was just a cute little shooter game and not much else. It wasn't until May of 2015, weeks before launch, that I and many others were won over by the concept with the global test fire, a basic multiplayer beta for all to try. And when the game finally released, it became a worldwide phenomenon. Or at least, it could have been. Before we get into it, I'm going to make a lot of comparisons to other shooter games. I mean, it's only fair, right? Nintendo had decades to observe this genre grow until they tossed their hat into it. I'm also going to be more or less lumping Splatoon 1 and 2 together, because it's basically the same game. So let's start positive since I'm going to be complaining for the rest of the video. Splatoon fundamentally has one of the most creative, innovative, and genius game design any multiplayer shooter has ever had. It's a 4v4 shooter. What makes this one different though is that you aren't shooting bullets, you're shooting ink. Shooting ink on the ground not only scores you points in a few game modes, we'll talk about the game modes later, but also allows you to swim in it to travel faster. Naturally, this ink is also used to eliminate other players, and when you do, they explode into your color of ink, covering even more terrain. When you shoot, you aren't just shooting for elimination, it aids your traversal and lets you hold off an area. Every multiplayer shooter, except maybe for arena shooters like Quake, have an invisible front line where teams are clashing. Depending on the game, it can be constantly shifting or static for minutes. What Splatoon does is not only make that front line visible, but gives great advantage in being inside your area and encouraging to not only eliminate other players, but take over their area, not only for winning, but for more traversal options as well. Regardless of mode, games are very fast too, which I love. It brings variety in a long play session to have a lot of smaller matches rather than 2 long matches, for example. And say what you want about the character designs, the aesthetic, or the music, but it's unique to Splatoon, and I couldn't imagine this game any other way. With all this praise, you probably think I love this game, but everything surrounding this fantastic gameplay is so fundamentally flawed that it makes it infinitely more frustrating. Now with that all out of the way, let's boot up the game. Immediately we have a problem. This intro is unskippable, and it plays every single time. With a game like Splatoon, you'd want to get into the action right away, but you gotta sit here throughout this whole thing. I like to read what they say at first, I guess, but the dialogue starts to repeat itself, so it loses all its charm quickly. I guess you could argue it's world building? I would say so for Splatfest. But for the same maps with the same dialogue and their stiff-ass animations, I'd say over time it's more immersion breaking than anything. Either that or Callie and Marie are just some hack hosts who recycle their jokes. How about only having these announcements when new content is added and for Splatfest? It'll make them feel more special and it'll bring more unique dialogue. Also for patches, they could do more than say, there's been a couple of changes to the game. How about they react to different nerfs and buffs to weapons? I'm sure they could write some funny stuff for it, and at the same time inform casual players who don't read patch notes. Anyways, now we load into the plaza. And that's the next problem, the plaza. What can you do here that couldn't be done in a menu screen? Hell, the gamepad acts as a traditional menu screen where you can go directly to any option. I get this is a lot more interactive and charming than a menu screen, and I will admit as a wee lad I would spend a good amount of time here wandering, especially during Splatfest. But man, does it feel like an empty husk. It's just bots of players you recently played with that sometimes walk around. I guess the Miiverse art is pretty charming, but how about having an actual social space with players running around? How about not having to load into shops and being able to see other players in the shop? Seriously, the potential for a Destiny or COD World War II style social space is just wasted for this. The only problem I see with this is that you'd probably get 15-year-olds role-playing in the plaza, which would be kinda strange, but how about a different kind of social space? One that is more personalized and private. Backyard Battleground is a highly underrated part of an already underrated Plants vs Zombies Garden Warfare 2. This is a big map with so many things to do. A cute story mode, collectibles, things to build, places to view your progression, a mini horde mode, a training course you can compete for high scores on. You can literally go into enemy lines and start a giant war. All this with the ability to invite up to 3 other friends to tag along, and without any loading screens interrupting. This is more than a glorified menu. This is almost half of the game right here, and Splatoon could have been the same. When you enter the multiplayer lobby, you have a few options. Regular battle, which is just one mode, Turf War. Ranked battle, which has 3 other modes, Splat Zones, Tower Control, and Rainmaker. League battle, which is basically squatting up with your friends to play the ranked mode. And private battle, which is just a private match. And there's also the Friends tab, which is just joining your friends in regular battles. Well, there's a lot to cover here, so let me just take out my list of complaints here. So let's start with, why is there only one mode in regular battle? Why can't I just join my friends in a lobby and queue up for regular battles like League Battle instead of praying to the Lord that there's a spot open in my friend's random lobby? Why can't I leave any multiplayer match, even regular battles, to a point where the only way to leave them is to unplug your console? That's right, the power button, it doesn't even work. You have to unplug your console to leave the multiplayer match, even in unranked modes. I get in a 4v4 game, having one person gone can be a huge blow to the team, but like, bans exist, guys. Why not ban someone for half an hour for ranked and a few minutes for casual? That's how Halo does it. They have 4v4 and I can alt F4 out of that sucker whenever I want. Like, imagine playing Halo or CSGO or whatever, and you have to unplug your PC to leave the game. Unreal. Now let's talk about the real elephant in the room. Why can't I play more than one mode in 2 maps at a time and have to wait hours to change? It's a pretty baffling decision. I'm pretty sure this is the only multiplayer game that does this. Other games either just choose any map from the pool for you or have a voting or veto system. In this game, it's like, yeah, you can play these 2 maps for 4 hours, then it will change. This pretty much kills the incentive to play longer than like an hour because you'll get bored of the maps and the modes. You just have to wait, and if you don't like any of the maps in rotation, too bad, just wait. One of the defenses I see for this is that you'll know what weapons to select depending on the map. But how about you let me change weapons in the lobby instead of being a list of players and names and nothing more? What's the point of even having player names displayed when you can't communicate or see their gear or character? Might as well have 2 PNGs of the maps that are available to save that poor Wii U's hardware resources. Skipping to Splatoon 2 for a second, Salmon Run is pretty much a wave-based mode like COD Zombies. And you know, it's pretty fun, but it's a mode that's locked, only being able to be played at certain times. What if Salmon Run is your favorite mode and you're busy for most of the day? Nah bro, you just gotta schedule your errands around that Splatoon mode because the people who designed the game know what's best. And yes, that's exactly what they say too. Look at this interview I found with the designer of Splatoon 2. Pardon my racism for cultural differences, but this is fucking stupid. Didn't Blizzard get attacked for saying the same thing about World of Warcraft years ago and still get mocked for it to this day?
You don't want to do that either. You think you do, but you don't.
The only difference here is that this is Nintendo, so they get a free pass. Okay, so they just announced today that Salmon Run is going to be a 24/7 mode in Splatoon 3. It still kind of proves my point, how this is somehow a feature that's worthy of hype. Also, I guess they didn't know what was best in the end, huh? Alrighty, let's get to the point. When I talk about missed potential, I not only mean the missed potential for the game to be better and make sense, but also the missed potential and popularity in esports. Splatoon's competitive scene is Sahara Desert dry, with big tournaments being held only by Nintendo themselves. It sounds far-fetched to say that all the little things I complained about contributes to this, but it does. The fact that Splatoon isn't just like a normal online game and lets you play whatever you want easily is a huge blow and makes people want to stop playing sooner because it's frustrating. It also doesn't help that they put an arbitrary deadline to upcoming updates. If the next game is coming out 5 years after the last one, why stop updates 2 years after release? You're setting an expiration date on your game before the new one is even coming out. Console exclusivity shouldn't be much of a hindrance competitive wise, especially now because of the popularity of the Switch. I mean, look at the Halo games. The difference between Splatoon and Halo, apart from many things, is that Halo not only lets you play whatever map or mode you want with friends, also prides itself in player freedom and expression with revolutionary community features, theater mode, forge, ranks being able to be viewed in detail. All this contributes to wanting to become a better player, and that's how a competitive scene grows. Splatoon has an app where you can view some stats and wins, and what maps are available to play, but that's not nearly as detailed or comprehensive as other stat and progression trackers. If they just designed the game normally, they could make big bucks, but they just insist on limitations. So what's the point of this video? I haven't even played Splatoon 2 seriously ever since Nintendo made me pay to play online. I went from Splatoon 2 to Team Fortress 2. I went from one neglected child to another. I don't even own a Switch anymore. So why am I so passionate about this? Well, because I want to play good games, and Splatoon is a good game. There's everything else going against it for arbitrary reasons that make no sense. So will Splatoon 3 be any better? It's just the same shit. We get some new things, most of which have existed since 2004. It's gonna be the same shit and people will eat it up because Nintendo fans are the most complacent people on planet Earth. I will gladly eat my words if they address all my issues, but they won't. Not with this game or any future game, because bottom line is, they don't have to. So yeah, that's it. Splatoon sucks. Go play Halo or COD or something.
For one, I'd personally like to say I'm really excited for Splatoon.